I have a question for you. Is there a piece of music gear that you never heard of while it was being produced, and then years later after it's been discontinued, you find out about it and wonder how you never heard of it when it was being produced? Let me know in the comments down below. For me, this happened with the Digitech Factory Series. Even though I started buying pedals in the early 2010s, I had never heard of this series and don't recall ever seeing it at a music store. I literally just found out about this series a few weeks ago from a JHS video talking about this whole line of pedals. After I watched JHS's videos on these pedals, I knew I wanted to try them, and I went down a huge rabbit hole looking into them and became super fascinated by it. I was able to track down someone who was willing to rent me these pedals for 2 weeks, and I got to spend a lot of time with them. So today we're going to talk about what the Factory Series is, why I like it, and why I think it never really became a classic pedal. And then afterwards I'm going to show off a song I wrote for this video showing off these pedals and how they sound. It's going to be a lot of fun and I'm excited for you to hear it. But first, welcome. My name's Cole, but you can call me Cole G. I like telling stories through guitar gear. If that interests you, please consider subscribing to the channel. But anyways, let's get into this video. The Factory Series was made by Digitech in 2005 and was a part of their broader X series of pedals. The series featured the Chorus Factory, Distortion Factory, and the Expression Factory. Each pedal featured 7 different emulations or models of different sounds. The Chorus Factory featured 7 different emulations of chorus effects. The Distortion Factory featured 7 different types of overdrive and distortion sounds. And the Expression Factory, well, it featured 7 different types of modulation / filtering / pitch shifting effects, plus 7 overdrive sounds that were found in the Distortion Factory. Plus, the Distortion Factory and the Expression Factory had cab simulation built into it. This series utilized DSP chips to model the different sounds, a technology that wasn't brand new for the time, but still wasn't widely as accepted as it is, say, today, especially for distortion sounds, but we'll get to that later. As I was around 5 or 6 years old when this pedal series came out, I didn't know how the series was received at the time, so I decided to do some sleuthing online and look through some guitar forums. I found one user put one of these pedals on their top 5 best pedals of the year list, or the most inspiring pedals. I don't know if it was the top 5 best pedals, but it was on their year-end list. But that was the only mention I saw of it on the forums. Aside from the one forum post and Music Radar's review of these pedals, I'm still not really sure how well these pedals were received at the time. So please let me know down below if you know how these were received, because I'm genuinely really curious. As far as I can tell, these pedals were in production until the early 2010s, when they were eventually discontinued, and then since then they've never been reissued or haven't been brought back. Since this pedal was discontinued, Digitech did release a lot of new pedals in the 2010s, but their output kind of slowed down in the late 2010s and early 2020s after it was sold to a new company, which says they will put out new pedals, which I'm really excited for, because it'd be really nice to see new Digitech pedals coming back. I will say though that those pedals that came out in the 2010s, they don't really excite me as much as the pedals that came out in the 2000s. Those 2000s pedals have a special place in my heart, especially the Bad Monkey and all those kind of goofy designs that they had then. It really fits that whole aesthetic, and call me crazy, but I really like that aesthetic. The Factory Series had faded into obscurity until JHS did a video on them and really showed how great these pedals were. And I'm really grateful for that video because I don't think I would have heard these pedals without it. So thank you, JHS. I've spent around 2 weeks renting these pedals, and I can honestly say they're really great pedals, and for the price, they are an amazing value. Before I was able to try these pedals out, I was really apprehensive about the Distortion Factory compared to the Chorus Factory and the Expression Factory. I expected that the Expression Factory and the Chorus Factory would sound good because there are mostly modulation effects in there, but distortion, that's a whole other story. Throughout pretty much my whole life, I've only heard negative things about model distortion. And especially considering this pedal's from 2005, it couldn't be good, right? Even though I've used model distortion in my Kemper for years, and in Line 6 Helix Native, and in my Neural DSP plugins, I use it all the time. But honestly, I was a bit closed-minded going into this pedal. But when I tried it out, I was really happy. I think the sounds sound really good. I personally think you could use this pedal live or in the studio, and honestly the listener's not going to know it's DSP or modeled distortion. When I tried out the Chorus Factory and the Expression Factory, I got pretty much what I was expecting. The pedals sounded really good, and I was happy with how they sounded. They sounded as good as a normal chorus pedal or a multi-effects pedal in my opinion. And for the price of the Chorus Factory and Distortion Factory, they're really a no-brainer in my mind. You can find these used for roughly $100 Canadian, and to get 7 different sounds on each of those pedals, it's really a bargain in my mind. However, the Expression Factory goes for a lot more money, starting at around 250 used Canadian, but honestly, you can justify that as well, considering it has wah sounds, whammy sounds, rotary sounds, distortion sounds, cab simulator sounds. It's got pretty much everything in there, and it sounds really good as well. An underrated feature of the Factory Series is just how many controls Digitech gives you for each modeled sound. In the Chorus Factory, for instance, you have a level, a depth, and a rate control. But depending on the pedal you're emulating, you also can have access to controls such as EQ, pre-delay, voice control. You really have a ton of flexibility in your tone that honestly a lot of other pedals don't have, with the pedal offering you low, mid, and high frequencies that you can cut or boost. The EQ section in the Distortion Factory is super smart because you can really tweak your sound so much, and honestly you can create your own really unique sounding overdrive sound that even the pedal that's being modeled wouldn't be able to make those sounds without an EQ pedal in front or after it, which some people may not like because it's not as true to the actual sound, but honestly I think it's really cool that you have extra flexibility. Digitech was able to cram all these features into the Factory Series enclosure by using these double knobs on them, with one of them controlling the main function and the other one controlling the secondary function. It's a pretty smart idea, though I do kind of wish they just had separate knobs for the other stuff, because occasionally I would adjust the wrong thing. My favorite sound in the Distortion Factory was Model 4, which is based off of a rat sound, and my favorite sound in the Chorus Factory was Model 5, which was based off of a Boss Super Chorus sound. But honestly, I found all the sounds in here to be super usable. Nothing sounded bad to my ears or really digitally to my ears. They all sounded really great and organic. So now it's time for me to show you the song that I wrote with these two pedals. I layered a bunch of different sounds together to create the sounds in this video. This song is definitely not a demo in the sense that I'm going to show you every single setting with this pedal, though I did use about 4 or 5 different distortion sounds and 2 to 3 different chorus sounds. But it's more meant to just show you how you can get this pedal to sound in a mix in a recorded context. After this song is done, I'm going to talk about why I think this pedal faded into obscurity. But alright, let's listen to the song. So I've established the history of the Factory Series and why I like it. So why did it fade into obscurity? Well, I do have a theory. When I think about why the Factory Series didn't do well, there's a particular pedal line, and pedal in particular, that I think really won the public over in a way that these pedals couldn't. And that's the Line 6 M Series and the Line 6 M9. So why didn't the Factory Series catch on like the M9 or the M Series? Well, here's my theory. Before the Line 6 M9 came out, Line 6 released the M13, which was this huge pedal board-like pedal that had a bunch of different sounds in it. It didn't have amp simulators in it, but it had all their delays, reverbs, modulations, filter, all those kind of effects from their old 4 series of pedals from the early 2000s. This was a super cool and revolutionary pedal, but there was one problem. It was so big. So in 2009, Line 6 released the M9, which wasn't meant to be the user's full pedal board, but meant to fit onto their pedal board and work around their other pedals. The M9 had all the same effects from the M13, meaning that you could have all the 4 series lines of pedals in a smaller pedal enclosure, which to me would just kill the need for the Factory Series. Even though the Line 6 M9 was really big, over 3 Factory Series stomp boxes pedals big to be exact, it had so much functionality to it that the Factory Series didn't have. It had all the effects sounds, you could run 3 effects simultaneously, it had a looper built into it, and a tuner. Plus, it only needed to be powered by 1 power supply compared to 3. Once Line 6 was able to put all their effects sounds into 1 enclosure, they won. Even though the Expression Factory had modulation sounds, pitch sounds, overdrive sounds, and cab simulator sounds, it was in a really clunky enclosure and it just didn't really work well compared to the M Series. With the M Series, you didn't have to hold down the foot switch for 3 seconds to access your overdrive. You pressed the button that had overdrive on it already, and it worked in a second. Line 6 was really competitive with their pricing as well, in my opinion. Digitech's Distortion Factory and Chorus Factory retailed for around $140 new Canadian, and the Expression Factory retailed for around $250 new Canadian. The last recorded price I could see of the Line 6 M9 was $350, but considering that you had access to 3 effects at once plus a tuner, that price alone was way better than the 2 cheaper Factory Series models. As for the Expression Factory, if you actually wanted to cycle through sounds, you needed a foot switch, which would probably bring you to around $300, $320 new Canadian at the time. So there wasn't much of a difference. So for $50 more, you got way more sounds and an easier unit to use, in my opinion. Line 6 realized with the M Series that it was better to include all their effects into 1 pedal rather than releasing limited multi-effects pedals like they had been doing with the Tone Core series and the 4 series. And if you look at their output since 2008 when the M Series came out, they've only released 1 limited multi-effects pedal, the DL4 Mark II, which arguably they released just because that pedal is such a classic and people wanted a newer version because so many people were using that pedal. I really think Line 6 is one of the main reasons why the Factory Series disappeared. Let me know if you disagree with me though. I'd love to hear your opinion on why this didn't work out well. On Cold G, I pride myself on being 100% honest with my audience. So if I had to choose between the Line 6 M9 or the Digitech Factory Series, I would choose the Line 6 M9, and here's why. Though I really do love the Factory Series, and I think they're a really cool forgotten pedal line, the Line 6 M9 just does more what I need it to do. When I'm looking at a multi-effects unit, I'm looking for something that has presets on it, and that maybe has a screen on it so I can see what my presets are. I don't really like multi-effects pedals in a stomp box enclosure. And that's what I found out with the Factory Series. Though I can totally see the appeal for this, not having any screens, just having 7 functions and that's it. What you have on is what you have on, you can't really change it. I just don't like that for me. Plus the Line 6 M9 has a ton of delay, reverb, modulation, filter, all those kinds of sounds built into it as well. And they go for around 100 to 150 used here in Canada. So for the price, you're getting a lot more bang for your buck. Plus you're also getting a tuner pedal on it and a looper. And though it takes up 3 pedal spaces, you can run 3 effects at once. I don't think Line 6 sounds better than Digitech. I think they both sound equally as good. But I just like what the Line 6 does for me more than the Digitech. But even though these pedals aren't really necessarily my cup of tea, they could be yours. If you don't like having unlimited options with your multi-effects, you'll probably love these pedals. There's only 7 chorus sounds on the Chorus Factory. There's only 7 distortion sounds on the Distortion Factory. It's very limited to that particular type of pedal. And it doesn't take up much space on your pedal board as well. So those 2 things alone might be a huge selling point for you. These pedals do sound great as well. As I alluded to, an audience wouldn't be able to tell that these are DSP compared to actual analog chips or whatever. They do a good job and they sound good. These pedals are also really great for someone who wants to experiment with different distortion or chorus sounds, or figure out what the differences are in different models. For roughly $100, you can get 7 sounds, figure out which ones you like the most. If you find that you're going to a particular sound a lot, you can actually buy that pedal and then use this pedal for another sound. There's so many different ways you could approach this pedal, in my opinion. Even though these pedals aren't for me, I still recommend them to guitarists. I genuinely think these are great pedals, and if you ever see a store selling them used or someone selling them on Marketplace, I say if you have the financial resources and are comfortable to, take a gamble with it, or at least try it out. You might be surprised, you might love it, or you might hate it. So that's the Digitech Factory Series. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever tried any of these pedals out? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you own any of these pedals? Do you think they deserve to fade into obscurity? Let me know in the comments down below and let's have a discussion. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Cole G, and I'll see you in the next one.